would prove it and say, no, she lost. There's an entire different community that thinks you absolutely won and there was election fraud. And then there are, again, the people in the middle, the independent, the libertarian, the ones that actually want to say, I'm open to being yes or no, but give me some proof. So recently, this just came out. This was last week, September 21st. This is from Kari Lake's third trial to begin after unsuccessful lawsuit challenging her loss in 2022. In 2022, Arizona governor race, and it continues to talk about how. Where's the page 3 here? What page is that on, Rob? Is it 5 or 6? Oh, there it is. Kari Lake, Republican who contested her loss in 2022 Arizona governor race, is headed to a third trial unrelated to her defeat, seeking to review all early ballot envelopes with voter signatures in Maricopa County, a request initially denied by officials. There was a bunch of videos saying this is not fair, this is not safe, it's risk for people's information to be out there. Then how are you supposed to know if we can't see the signatures, right? Mm-hmm. Lake previous legal challenges included claims that defective printers produced ballots that were too light or too small and alleged misconduct in the signature verification process. However, she failed to present sufficient evidence in both trials, with judges concluding she didn't back her claims. Lake's latest lawsuit, a public record case, faces opposition from county's officials who argued that disclosing early ballot envelopes wouldn't promote the best interest of the state and could invite voter fraud and identity theft. Lake's two-day trial will be held Thursday and Monday. So where is it at today? Because a lot of people were following it very closely. And the thing for me that was extremely suspicious is when your opponent didn't even want to have a debate. I don't if you're that confident in your argument, have a debate with Kari. There's nothing wrong with that. But that never happened. So where is it so far right now with the progress you're making with this 2022 Arizona governor race?
Much like you said, Biden was a motivational speaker. That's kind of what my opponent is like.
Makes sense.
If you think us and Oz are motivational, she can't get through a sentence without about 10, that kind of stuff. And we saw that whenever she did speak on the campaign trail, which wasn't very often. And, she was Secretary of State, so she had a big say in how the elections were run in the state. We asked her to recuse herself from that, and she refused. There's so many unethical people in our government. But she knew that she would be destroyed in a debate because she did not have policies. I had the strongest border policy the country's ever seen. And now we're starting to see some of these governors who are spineless and won't do anything. Now they're starting to go, okay, maybe we do have an invasion at the border. It was 2 years ago that I put this plan out. Governors don't have to rely on the federal government to protect their citizens. And call it what it is, an invasion. Go straight to the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, and protect your citizens, protect your state when your state's being invaded. And frankly, protect the country. Because if these border state governors started doing something rather than being part of the problem, we wouldn't have New York City overrun with people here illegally. We wouldn't have fentanyl pouring into our country, killing people. So, that was her problem. She had no policy. She couldn't speak. She's just a puppet. She's not intelligent. And they just wanted to get her in office so that they could control Arizona. The cartels are fully in control of Arizona right now. The Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, is a cartel lawyer, former cartel lawyer. And we have an AG who took that position as well. And I know there might be people out there who don't believe in election fraud, but we lived it in Arizona. And the majority of people in Arizona believe it because they experienced it firsthand. They saw what happened. They showed up on Election Day, and at 6 a.m. when they got in line, so excited to vote, they don't trust the mail-in ballots because they saw what happened in 2020 with Trump. So the majority of people showed up to vote. And right away, they were told by the poll workers, our equipment doesn't work in 60% of the polling locations. And how ironic that it was the Republican polling locations where the equipment didn't work. So we did fight it afterwards. We said something went wrong here. We know what happened. Lines were 4, 5, even 6 hours long on Election Day. So one line went almost a mile long to vote. And people were so mad when they realized it's happening again.
Hold this up, Rob, because there's images out there of it. But please continue.
It's happening again. I mean, there were people. We have video of people. We took video right away. We said we've got to go document these stories. Adults, veterans, people who were tough guys who were in tears at what happened, and they stole this election. I was polling 10, 11, and 12 points up. The internal polling, that's the good stuff, the real accurate stuff, Katie Hobbs did not win, and everyone in Arizona, and frankly, everyone across the country knows it. And when they say, prove it, I am proving it. Why are the judges not ruling against us? I believe we have massive corruption in our judiciary. If you saw the case wrap up yesterday, where we're trying to get our hands on public records, which are these affidavit envelopes, the way that judge behaved yesterday, it needs to be put, somebody out there, if they've got time, I'm a little busy right now, need to take that judge and every remark he made in our 2-day trial and loop it together, because I've never seen a judge behave that way. It was so dead obvious where he was. It was as if he was co-counsel for the defense. They don't want us to get our hands on these affidavit ballots, the mail-in ballots when you send in, because they know if we do see those, that there aren't going to be signatures. There's going to be chicken scratches. There are 300,000 ballots that were injected into the system, and this is a whistleblower who told us this, 300,000 ballots injected into the system with no chain of custody. Every time you mail in a mail-in ballot, there is a tight chain of custody. You can tell where that ballot came from. Now, nobody knows where you voted or who you voted for, but they know where that ballot came from. 300,000 with no chain of custody in the Maricopa County 2022 elections. That wasn't enough to win, to give Katie Hobbs the win, so they had to sabotage Election Day. The most egregious thing we saw when we finally got our hands on the system log files, which is basically data, lines and lines of data that show everything that happened in the election in Maricopa County, and we had our analysts start looking through it, was, what are these 3 days of testing that were done? And we noticed in the 3 day of testing, a lot of failures, very high failure rate, 60% failure rate of the machines, 59%. So we dug in a little further and we said, okay, this is interesting. They did their testing, the required by law testing, on the 11th of October. They brought the cameras in, dog and pony show, and we found out that when they did that official testing, those were on spare machines that they weren't even using. They then rolled the spare machines back. They don't use them. And over a 3 day span, the next week, they perform testing illegally, no observers, no Democrat, no Republican, no media. They crack open the seal on these machines. They pull out the memory card, put a new memory card in, and then they start testing it over a 3 day period. And they get 59% failure rate, 59% failure rate. It looks like a dry run. They wanted these machines to fail. Then they took those machines and they rolled them out on Election Day. And these people who tell me not to fight this is ridiculous. We can't have our country run with elections like this. We can't. If we don't have fair elections, we don't have a country. And our elections are theater to make us think we have.
Kari, let me ask this. So, first of all, Tom, question for you and anybody here. In the history of elections, governor, anything that's governor, Senate, Congress, president, any of those levels, has there ever been fraud where the person who won a year, 2 years, 3 years later, it came back and showed that this person cheated and won, and then what happened to that person?
We had that happen in Arizona before. 100 years ago in Arizona, I think it was 1916, there was a contested governor's race, and one governor sat in office for a year, and the courts finally ruled that that was not the legitimate governor, and they put the other guy in. This happened in Arizona. You got it there.
Is that the precedent for why you keep pushing this? Meaning,
well, I keep pushing it.
Meaning it's happened in Arizona before, so there's precedent, so this is sort of a motivating factor to
That's
keep
one of
fighting
the
it.
cases that we cited in our original court case. But I'm fighting this because I want the people to know that our elections are not reliable. They're not fair. They're not perfect elections like the officials say.
You know why I'm asking that question? Here's why I'm asking that question. Has there ever been any outside of that in the recent years in any state?
Actually, in smaller elections, there have been. I think there's a county in New York where they deemed that the county just was not run. The elections weren't run on the up and up, or they
How
had
recent was that?
Oh boy.
Yeah. You know why I'm asking this question? The reason why I'm asking, were you going to say something, Tom, or no?
Yeah, I think you go back to Kennedy, Nixon, and the investigators that were used by the Republican Party. This is West Virginia, and they went in and they absolutely had them dead to rights in West Virginia, but it was Nixon who said, for the good of the country, we shouldn't contest this, because they knew, but they didn't have like a stack of facts that Illinois was carried, right? They knew what happened in Illinois. Yeah, absolutely. And but West Virginia, you look at how close that election was, as close as Gore W. Bush. That election.
But do you know why I'm asking this question? I'm asking this question for a couple different reasons. One is, would we want an audit to find out exactly if there was any fraud? And if yes, okay, if they have a case in one state that happens, then another state wants to do it as well, and another state wants to do it as well, and all those legal fees that you got to spend in it. Maybe they don't want to do it because they want people to trust in the system. So they're like, look, whether they cheated or not, it's done, guys. Just move on. We don't want the American people to lose trust in the, voting system. So let's just say in my mind, I'm just kind of processing it to see why are they so worried about this. But okay, fine. Let's say that's one of the reasons. Number two, let's look at solutions. So if you are in there, whether it's White House has influence to be able to fix the elections so people can trust in it more, or state-wise, how would you improve the system of electing?
Well, it really isn't the federal government's job to improve our elections. It's state by state, and the state legislature and the Constitution is the one that controls the elections. And we need to change laws somewhere along the way. When I started voting, I'm dating myself here, but back in 1988 when I started voting, we had election day. And our Constitution in Arizona calls for election day. And somehow it's become election month, 27, 28 days of voting. And then they count for up to 2 weeks until they get the result they want. The longer you drag out the voting process, the more there's areas to throw fraud in. And they've complicated it. It used to be a paper ballot. You showed up in a small precinct where there were 500, 700 people on the voter roll. And it was really easy to determine if somebody's like, wait a minute, you're not on the voter roll. You need to go to your precinct and vote. It's easier to control, make sure that there's not fraud slipping in. But along the way, I believe they realized that they can't win these elections because they have terrible policies that are not for the American people. And they've added layers of complication. And for somebody, so I think paper voting one day, and you count right there at the precinct. That way the count comes from, if you're in precinct 27, it comes from that precinct. At the end of the night, it's counted. You send the results to Central. They tabulate all of them. They add up all the different precincts, and we have the winner that night. This is how elections have been run.
How did that happen, though? How did it? I wouldn't
Why
be okay
did it get
with
complicated?
I wouldn't be okay with 27, 28 days. I wouldn't be okay with it.
This is what we have right now.
But how do we have that? How do we get here, though?
Was that COVID? Was that because of COVID that they were like, listen, people have to?
How have the American people been okay with it taking this long? Like, I can see Democrats being like, well, you guys just bitch a lot and you guys complain a lot, Republicans, because as long as Democrats win, they don't want to find, like, it's working.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So there's not a problem for Democrats,
Not
right?
at all.
Okay. Then I can see Republicans being like, well, it's not the guy I wanted anyway, so I don't give a shit. Okay, so there's some that are rhinos and there's some that are establishment. Yeah, so it's okay. Yeah, he lost in your face, and great. Then there's the other community that's going to be like the independents saying, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. I don't trust this. I want to know whoever won to win. So my vote matters. So people don't lose credibility and, well, my vote doesn't matter. Why should I vote anyway? They're going to manipulate it anyway. So I want to know, the people that actually want to know for the vote to count, they're not okay with it taking 27, 28 days. How did they get to that long of a time?
I believe it really has been because their policies are so bad. This is an attempt to make sure we have people in that are controllable. I mean, 27 days of voting, early voting, and you look at what happened when any state goes full mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots really are not secure ballots. Would you put $500 in an envelope and put it in the mail right now?
Post office? No way.
No,
Absolutely not.
But you're putting your vote, and now they're saying there's
If it's
absolutely no
certified
fraud.
mail, though.
If it's certified, but it's not, unfortunately. And so any state that has gone full mail-in immediately starts to turn full left. Look at Washington State, Oregon. I mean, California is going that way. When you start seeing a loosening of the voter laws and procedures, immediately the state starts to go toward the left.
I have a question.
When you see laws that are adhered to, that's when you see sanity, and you know that you've got one vote, you have one vote, I have one vote. And why should America care about this? I've been all over the country. If you're in a state, Oklahoma, for example, I've been in Oklahoma, pretty red state. I believe all 50 states need to improve their elections to make sure that they are reformed and secure, so we know that one legal vote per legal voter. But why should Oklahoma care about Arizona's election fraud? Because even if your state's running a pretty decent election, if Maricopa County, one county in Arizona, runs their elections with corruption and fraud, your vote doesn't count. Your vote for President Trump, because we know, I believe the country knows President Trump won. Some people can't admit it, but your vote doesn't count if they're watering it down with a bunch of phony fake ballots in 3 or 4 counties across the country. And look where the world is going, because we had that fraudulent election in 22. We have Joe Biden in the White House. We're on the verge of World War III. It's like, wake up, people. We are on the verge of a war. Our economy is in the toilet. Our borders wide open. Our country's being invaded. How many more, alarm bells do we have to go off before people go, we've got to deal with our elections?
You have to look at the history of the precinct system in American voting. Precincts used to be fire stations, schools, civic centers, and they were small. Precincts were small for 2 reasons. Well, a lot of small precincts allowed people, back before we had 2-income housing, everybody driving to work, moms working. And what happened was you could walk to your precinct. You walk to your fire station, your school, everything, you could vote. Small precinct gives you high control. And you make a phone call. Okay, here we are. Here's the result. 62, 31, 14. And the precincts dialed it in. What happened was on the mail-in ballots, it started with, there's a variety of things, and then they jumped on that because there's cracks where they could leverage it. It started with, wait a minute, shouldn't our overseas military get to vote in their elections? Well, yeah, national elections, sure they should. Okay, well, let's get them an absentee ballot. And that's where it was. It wasn't mail-in ballots. It was absentee ballots. Well, yeah, let's do that. Well, then people started retiring, and they adapted it. They started adapting, the voting rules. Well, maybe they're shut-ins or people that can't make it to their precinct. Let's give them an absentee ballot. And then that was the crack where they said, hey, you know what? You know what we could do? Vinny, what if we just go to the old folks' home and just harvest the ballots?
Which they did in Wisconsin.
That's
did you see the saddest video in the whole world was these people who they don't even know their loved one's name, and they voted. They can't even feed themselves. They can't do anything.
Correct. And let's go look at one of the first motions in Gore versus Bush in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. The Democrats wanted to disqualify the military vote that was absentee that was coming back into Florida because there were servicemen in Jacksonville, Marine Corps Air Station that's down in Miami. They tried to disqualify those votes. And so you can see what happened. And Pat, we went down the slippery slope where, hey, just mail-in voting. Let's make it easy for everyone. But there used to be reasons to let the military, to let shut-ins have an absentee ballot. Absentee ballot became mail-in ballot. Mail-in ballot became just the wild, wild west where Vinny and I could harvest an old folks' home and then have them vote any way we want. Or because now they're bringing them in for old folks' home, Vinny and I could just walk in at midnight with 10,000 ballots and say, hey, more mail-ins. And they wouldn't even question us. In the old days, they would say, wait, are these absentees from military? Wait, where's this all coming from? Now you see the cracks formed, and there is the fraud.
And really quickly, what Tom just said, the precinct voting was done at the fire station or the mainly churches and schools. I mean, I could walk a block or two to mine before. What closed during COVID? Churches and schools. I don't think that's coincidental. And what else happened? Mass mail-in voting. This is it's really obvious when you start digging into what's really going on.
Whoever was the mastermind behind the strategy, I want that person on the podcast.
And Kari, because I'm a pattern guy. I look at patterns. Other people call me different names, but I'm a pattern guy. So like in your case, your opponent doesn't want to debate as if they already know everything's set up. It's really weird, right? The machines don't work. People are showing up. They have to go to different places. Pretty weird. The person that you're going up against oversees the entire election. That's really, really odd for me. Then that umbrella that Pat was talking about, all the media makes you seem like you're this crazy election-denying kook. The judges seem like they're in their back pockets. Then we go back to the Trump situation. I see, and it's already starting to happen with him because Hillary already is in front of the news saying what? Putin is going to cheat.
She's saying the 24 election is going to be rigged. I'm like, wait a minute, indict her.
She's a cheat. Yeah,
you play the clip.
Yeah, and then Kari. And then already Fauci, Biden, Bill Gates, they're all warning us about pandemic 2, which is a perfect stay-at-home, stay in the basement. You know what I mean, for Biden, so everybody to vote. Do you think, Kari, if you had to guess, do you think that they're gearing up for something for 2024? Because it already seems. I mean, Trump is kind of passing Biden by like 10%. If you had to guess, Kari, do you think something? Because I mean, if you think about it, a virus coming out of a country that we own the lab comes out, keeps everybody at home. You have to mail in your ballots. Joe Biden doesn't go in front of a camera. If he does, it's in front of like 20 people. Do you think that something wild is going to happen to keep everybody at home to have that same process happen?
I don't know. I'm almost thinking that they know they can't cheat at the level they would have to defeat Trump, and that's why they're trying to keep him off the ballot in numerous states. They've got, sadly, Republicans, people with an R behind their name, trying to keep a man of the people that the people want off the ballot now, because that tells me, okay, why not just put him on the ballot if they could cheat to that level? The people, by the time the election rolls around, are going to be so fed up with the way things are going that I even believe we're moving towards seeing Democrats, disaffected Democrats who are waking up to the fact that their party is no longer the Democrat Party, who are going to vote for America First policies. The media will say they're extreme policies. He's an extremist. You know, these MAGA people are extremists. Make America great again is extreme.
Yeah.
Wanting a secure border, wanting to make sure your kids and my kids don't get their hands on fentanyl, I don't know. I don't think that's extreme. I think the opposite is. If you're okay with the border being open, that is extreme. If you are okay with the United Auto Workers not having an industry to show up to work for because they're going to ship our auto industry over to China to make EV vehicles and force you into an EV vehicle against your will because they're not going to have, this Green New Deal is such a ridiculous thing, that's extreme. If you think it's okay to talk to our kids when they're 6 years old or at a doctor's appointment. We just found out in Arizona at the nursing school, U of A, they're teaching nurses to, at age 3, in the wellness check at age 3 for a little one, to ask them about their gender identity. This stuff is extreme. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to be shamed.
At 3 years old.
At 3 years old. Ask if they feel like they're really a girl or...
I want to be a cowboy. Is that my identity?
I want to ask you.
I mean, my son wanted to be a dinosaur.
I still want to be a dinosaur. I actually have a very direct question to you. I actually believe that you're actually a very strong, attractive candidate. I think you have a winning message. Everything you've talked about, especially regarding immigration, the border, the wall, you're in Arizona for the past 30 years.
Plan. Not many people had a plan to deal with the homeless
You have a lot of good things that you say, especially everything you talked about with the woke agenda, the LGBT, the trans. We've talked about that on the podcast infinity times. You have a platform. I believe that you also have what Candace Owens called the it factor. You're media savvy. You're attractive. Your hair looks great today. Congrats, even with the headphones on. You have a lot going for you. Why not focus on that more? Meaning, if you Google Kari Lake, and if you look at any YouTube clip, you are the almost face of election denialism. So my question to you is this. You have so much going for you. Even like SNL does parodies of you. My question is this. We saw what happened in 2020 or 2022 during the midterms. Any Trump-backed candidate that doubled down on election denialism did not win. You came dangerously close to beating Hobbs. Why do you think that election denialism is a winning message? Because at the end of the day, if you don't win, you don't win. Like, Trump's not reversing the 3 years ago election. It doesn't seem likely you're going to reverse this election from 2022. You have so much going for you, so many positive qualities. Why not just say, listen, I take my ball, I lost, I'm going to crush it the next time and win, rather than double down on the loss? Why not?
Well, for starters, I never got into politics to have a big political career. I mean, when people say you're going to hurt your political career, I frankly don't give a damn about a political career. And we need to get people who are in this to have a political career out of politics. And it was not just an unfair election, it was a fraudulent election. I don't walk away from a noble fight. And if I were to walk away from what they did to the people who stood in line and couldn't vote, almost 250,000 votes were rejected on election day. Almost 250,000 votes. And 75% minimum were voting for me. So I look at those people, they've reached out to me and said, please fight this. Don't walk away from this fight. If I don't stand up and fight for them, they don't have a shot at fighting this fraud in the elections. I'm a mom first and foremost. If you have a problem in your household, And I think, how many of you are dads? Okay. If you have a problem in your household, you don't, if you have a problem in your marriage, if you find out your teenagers are getting into something dangerous and you need to deal with it, you don't put your head in the sand and go, well, let's not look back. Let's look forward. Things will get better. Things aren't going to get better if we don't have fair elections.
But Kari, with all due respect, that's not what wins elections. What wins elections, whether it's Trump in 2016, whether it was Obama in 08, whether it was George W. Bush in 2000, is let's do something great to make America great again.
Absolutely.
Let's look to the future. The future looks bright, as we say. Sell me the dream. Sell me the dream.
And I believe
if
I
you
did
sell,
that.
hey, 3 years ago this happened, last year this happened, it's been proven that it doesn't necessarily work.
I don't know.
If
you're turning a noble fight into a platform decision.
I'm not.
And
I'm
a
saying
little
that
incensed by
she could
this is
win.
Not a platform decision. This is a noble fight.
Oh, excuse me, Mrs. Lake. Let me ask Kari her question.
Whoa.
So I'm asking, at what point?
The man who never interrupts. The man who has got.
You know
Adam,
what, Adam?
you
I
asked
agree
the
with.
question,
I
let her
agree,
respond.
I
That's
agree
what
with,
I'm asking
I agree
you.
with parts of what you said, and I look back at our campaign, which is when I got into politics. I don't know how I ended up in the middle of the political world, but I did, and we had all that. My number one platform issue was not elections. It was we've got to secure this border.
Totally agree.
And these governors aren't doing anything, and they're failing at their duty to the people. I had a great policy on education, and I'm again dating myself here, but we used to have trade school training in our high schools. Got rid of all that, and now we're doing DEI and CRT and trans agenda. We need to get our kids, especially our boys, ready for real jobs out there.
Totally
I had great
agree.
policy on that. Great policy to deal with our chronic street homelessness, and I can go down reshoring manufacturing to Arizona. With our proximity to Mexico, it's a great opportunity to grow and expand the economy in Arizona. Excellent policies. And they knew that, oh man, this woman means business. She's going to shut down our illegal activity, our trafficking of drugs and children and human beings. And they had to stop me. And so we have to deal with what's happening in our elections and reform our elections. And this is, you're reading Google, and all of these articles are written by a slanted media that has completely gone off the hinge propagandist. And they're writing all these and saying she's an election denier and nobody's for it. I'm out there with the people every day. I have been all over this country, everywhere I go, even in Portland, Oregon. I think I got stopped more in Portland, Oregon. People saying, thank you for what you are doing. You've got to fight for our elections. We don't have a state anymore. They're ruining our state, and we can't vote our way out of it anymore. We've gone full-on mail-in ballots. They're destroying Portland. They're destroying the entire state now, and we are stuck and we're held hostage by rotten elections.
I want to say something here, okay? I want to say something here. I fully, I asked this question of Rudy Giuliani, so you know where I stand. We had this live debate, and I'm asking Rudy, you keep talking about fraud. It's not an attractive thing to do. Here's what's going to end up taking place. People want to know, what is the plan? Great. But I actually have a question. You ever watched the movie Flash of Genius?
No.
It's the story of Robert Kearns, okay? So who Robert Kearns is, this is the guy that invents the intermittent wiper because he had a hard time watching when it was raining, so the wiper wasn't fully clear.
I love that guy. I didn't know that was him.
That's him. So
Intermittent wipers are one of the great inventions.
But I got to tell you, he may end up being your biggest source of inspiration. I think you got to watch the movie. Let me explain why. So this guy, Robert Kearns, invents it, goes and takes it to different car companies. Okay, he takes it to Ford. He takes it to, this is the movie. He takes it to Ford. He takes it to Chrysler. What these guys do is he gets a patent in 1964. He patents this in 1964. Ford sees it, says, this is an insane idea. But guess what Ford does? Ford takes it and says, you never came up with this. We did it ourselves. And they said, there's only 4 pieces to this thing. This is not a big deal. We did it ourselves. And in court, there's a scene where he's telling the judge, says, Judge, have you ever used the word book? Yes. You ever used the word philosophy? Yes. You ever used the word I have? Yes. How come you've never written one of the greatest books of all time that Charles Dickens did? He has access to the same words you did, but he knew what words to pick to put together to write one of the greatest books of all time. He says, it's not about the pieces being this simple. I found the right 4 pieces to use to put this together. Watch what ends up happening. This is my, he ends up fighting Ford and Chrysler, goes to court. loses his marriage, loses his kids, loses everything he has. Eventually, Ford offers him $30 million. And by the way, this is not $30 million of today's money. This is $30 million of 60s, 70s money. It's real money.
Wow.
You know what he says? He says no. He says they gave him $30 million to say he was at fault. Oh, wow. Ford wanted to give him $30 million to go publicly and say, I was at fault. He says, I'm not doing that. You ruined my life. I invented this product. I'm going fully on with this thing here. He ends up winning. Instead of getting $30 million, he only gets $10.1 million, but Ford had to publicly say they were at fault. Wow. Chrysler later on had to end up paying him around $18.7 million, and his story became public. I think for somebody to prove there is fraud, they're going to destroy your life. Okay, and I think someone has to do it, because I think it is inspirational for someone to take this kind of a risk. For the longest time, this guy's own family didn't believe him. There's scenes of his kids questioning Dad, why are you doing this? We're losing everything, because he had to use money for legal fees and all this other stuff. You're crazy. You're nuts. You're this. I believe that I don't have all the intel. I don't know what happened there. I'm extremely suspicious. Extremely suspicious. You need 27, 28 days for what? My kids can count up to 100,000. You can't count it in 1 day or 2 hours or 3 hours with all the technology that they have. The person doesn't show up to debate. So all I'm saying is, I think if this is truly something you want to go fight for, I hope you go all the way through, because I think there is a reason why no one's ever done this, because they're going to do whatever they can to destroy your life. They're going to do whatever they can to destroy your life. But whoever ends up proving it, the rest of the American people will be protected for decades and centuries to come, because they're always going to go back and say the Kari Lake case, the Kari Lake case, the Kari Lake case, just like this guy here, Robert Kearns, who did what he did. So, by the way, I don't think it's going to be a fun fight. I think it's going to take years. I don't think it's going to be solved in 3 to 6 months. I think it's going to take a different president to come in, to want to have to investigate this, to want to encourage that we want to change the ways we're handling elections, to appoint different people that can investigate, that are private, not just public. But all I'm saying here is, so you're making a very good point. Yeah, it's probably not an attractive thing to campaign on if you want to win public office. So here's a question for you. What's more important to you? Becoming a senator or becoming a governor, and none of this stuff is ever proven, or you never become a senator, you never become a governor, you never become a VP, but in the next 3, 5, 10 years, we finally find out there was fraud here, and for anybody else in the future, that runs is protected. Which of those two is more important to you?
I think you know the answer.
I want to hear it.
The latter. And I'm never going to stop fighting. I'm never going to stop fighting for honest elections, reform in our elections. We've walked away from far too many fights, and that's how we've gotten into this position. And sadly, the Republicans have walked away. That's why President Trump is so loved. It's like, finally, we have a fighter. Is he perfect in every single way? No, and I don't think any of us here or anybody listening is, but he fights for us every day. And I will fight. As I've said, we surrender so many hills. We're on our final hill. I'm going to the top of it, and if they want to stop me, they're going to have to go up to the top and take me down. I don't care about money. I don't care about even getting credit for saving our elections and reforming them. If I go to my grave and I know that my children, and at that point, hopefully great-grandchildren, maybe great-great-grandchildren, have a republic to live in with a constitution that is adhered to, with a Bill of Rights that actually exists, I will be the happiest human being, even if I'm penniless.
Even if you're penniless.
What good is this?
Are you seeing what they're doing to Rudy Giuliani?
Oh, I was just with Roger Stone last night.
Do you know who?
They're coming after everything I have right now. They're suing me for defamation for having the courage to speak out about our elections.
They're not going to stop.
And they won't stop. But that's okay. What good is that money if we lose our country? So here's our choices. What you're saying right now is you could just be quiet and keep the money you have and all of that. But then we're going to be a year out from now in I believe, a communist globalist country. We're losing our American freedoms. We're losing them every day, if you haven't noticed. And what good is that money living in that if we don't have our freedom? And so we need a few people who are freedom fighters right now. And, as long as I have enough to eat, I'm okay with that.
I don't
eat that much.
I don't think the dirtiness has started with you yet. I think they're banking on you stepping away from this, and I think they're banking on you quitting on this and moving on to Senate and allowing Senate to be the next distraction. Because when they look at people like you, and what I mean by people like you is the fighters, you're very annoying. You're very annoying in the way when you fight somebody
fly in the ointment.
You're pesky.
A true believer is a very annoying opponent. Very annoying opponent. You like to face people that can be bought with women, with girls, with
They tried to
recognition,
buy
with
me.
books,
They tried to bribe me.
Right.
Came to my door and tried to bribe me.
Who did?
I'm not going to name names because I don't. And people say, why won't you name the person? And I said, because I don't want to shoot the messenger. Came to my door, called me one day, and this was back when I was finishing up my book, which is called Unafraid. I highly recommend it. And said, can I come over? I got to talk to you about something, but it has to be in person. I can't do it on the phone. And I thought, okay, that's a red flag. What's going on here?
Was this a person you knew already?
It's a political figure. That's
Big name?
That's known. I think in some circles, yeah. And showed up and said, look, we want you. This is probably March. So our case was, I think, in the appellate court. We were, continuing.
March of 23.
March of this year. It
Gotcha.
might have been February.
So meaning this is several months after the 2022 election.
Yeah, I was still fighting. I was just
Got it.
wrapping. I think it was March because I was just finishing up the book.
Got it.
And doing some final edits on it. And I was trying to pack to get out the door to go to CPAC. I was going to be delivering a speech at CPAC. And person comes over, sits down, and says, got a great offer for you, coming from some pretty powerful people back east. Great position, great title, huge salary, position on a board. And all they want is for you to not run again in this next election, just one election cycle, 24, not be on the ballot. And I was just, shocked that this was, I'm thinking this is the kind of stuff happens in movies, right?
Yeah.
And I said, well, why don't you go back and tell them that I'm not motivated by a job. I'm not motivated by a powerful position. I'm not motivated by money. I walked away from that. I truly walked away from my dream job because we're losing our country. So the conversation went on and tried to convince me, just sit one out. You can always get back in. I don't think they want me on the ballot in any position and Trump, because if my movement comes out to vote and Trump's movement, all of the rhinos and globalists or whoever they're going to put in are going to go down. And so I shooed the guy out because I said, I've got to pack. I'm finishing up my book. As he's leaving, he turned around. He said, what would it take? How much would it take for you to just not run in 24? And to be honest, I was so consumed with writing the book at the time. I was finishing up, travel plans to get out of the house. I wasn't really, people had talked about me running for Senate, and I've given it a lot of thought. And if they're willing to steal an election from the good people of my state to bring me down and get me out, I'm not giving them that. That gives them the victory. And I'm glad that Trump is willing to stay in as well, because they took it from him. And if he were to say, look, it's too hard, they might ruin me, they might take all of the money I have and leave me in ruins. If he would have done that, then they win.
Is this a person that's part of the establishment right?
I really don't want to give too many.
Here's why I'm asking the question. Okay, but you have proof. Like if they came to destroy your life, you have proof of this situation taking place.
Yes, but the person who delivered the message was not the person behind the offer.
But the person told you who was behind the person of the offer.
Just said it was powerful people back east.
And east as in New York or DC East?
I'm thinking the
DC
swamp.
East. Okay, I got you. So where I'm going with where you're at right now. So you're saying you would rather fight for your beliefs on what happened and give up every other possibility of what you could do to go prove that you were right. Okay, so I think they're thinking you're going to give up quickly. I think they think you're going to
I don't think they think that now. And by the way, there will be more lawsuits to come. We're working on other things.
In their eyes, there's been 100 of you. Trust me, they're arrogant people who they think there's been many of you, and they know how to distract people like you with other distractions, and then all of a sudden they're going to be like, yeah, her fire could, because, emotions are always high when you first go through a breakup, right?
Yeah.
So you cry, oh my God, this is that, who is he dating, who is she dating? Let me check her Instagram, his Instagram, and 2 months later, like, oh man, I wish her nothing but the best, and we kind of move on, right?
Yeah.
Only a few people are like, oh, hell no, he did me wrong, she did me wrong. Okay, so in a situation like this, for the most part, most people move on, right? They're banking, you're going to move on with another run that you'll go on. That's what they're banking on. I think so. And if you choose to keep pushing to find out and get to the bottom of this. I think what you're experiencing so far of them destroying your life is 1/10 of what they can do. Just this morning, you know who Giuliani got sued by?
Who?
A guy named Hunter Biden.
He did.
Just 5 minutes before we went live,
Yeah.
Hunter Biden sues Rudy Giuliani over laptop, accuses ex-Trump lawyer of hacking. Biden alleges Giuliani is responsible for the total annihilation of his digital privacy, claims there was no laptop. So maybe
Yeah,
it's,
he just sued, I think, Garrett Ziegler for putting all of that together and explaining what was on the laptop.
he also sued the IRS. I mean, he pretty much sued his dad.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.